Friedrich Nietzsche. Ecce Homo. How one becomes what one is. Friedrich Nietzsche's provocative autobiography reveals the inner workings of one of history's most radical thinkers, written just months before his mental collapse in 1889. Rather than a typical life story, this work presents a fierce examination of what it means to become who you truly are, regardless of social expectations or conventional morality. You'll encounter revolutionary insights about the relationship between physical health and intellectual creativity, the hidden psychology behind moral systems, and the necessity of standing alone against popular opinion to achieve genuine greatness. Nietzsche demonstrates how periods of illness and isolation can become sources of profound strength and clarity, challenging the common assumption that suffering is purely negative. In this blink, you'll learn why questioning everything society holds sacred isn't destructive but essential for personal growth, and how developing the ability to see life from multiple perspectives, both strong and weak, provides unique wisdom unavailable to those who experience only one state. Illness can become a powerful source of strength and self-knowledge when properly understood. Most people view illness as purely destructive, something to overcome as quickly as possible. Yet this perspective misses a profound opportunity for growth that becomes available only through genuine suffering. Physical weakness can unlock insights and capabilities that remain hidden during periods of robust health. Illness forces a complete re-evaluation of priorities and strips away superficial concerns. When confined to bed for months, unable to read due to eye problems, the mind turns inward in ways that busy, healthy periods never allow. This involuntary solitude creates space for authentic self-reflection. Nietzsche discovered that his period of greatest physical weakness coincided with his most important philosophical breakthroughs, including the dawn of day. Most remarkably, during severe headaches lasting 3 days with violent nausea, he experienced what he called most singular dialectical clearness and thought through concepts that would have been impossible during healthier moments. In the midst of this agony, in absolutely cold blood, he worked out ideas that required a level of subtlety and intellectual precision unavailable to him when physically well. This combination of extreme suffering and mental clarity produced insights of extraordinary depth that became foundational to his philosophy. Illness also teaches the art of instinctive self-preservation and reveals true character. A fundamentally healthy nature will instinctively choose remedies that aid recovery, while a decadent nature gravitates toward what harms it further. This becomes a test of underlying vitality. Nietzsche's ability to restore himself to health through self-discipline, choosing solitude, refusing to be pampered, and maintaining strict personal routines, demonstrated the soundness of his basic constitution. His illness became a form of education, teaching patience, self-observation, and the ability to find meaning in suffering. The key lies in understanding illness not as defeat, but as a different form of strength. Those who navigate serious health challenges often develop resilience, wisdom, and appreciation for life that healthy individuals may never acquire. Rather than viewing periods of weakness as lost time, they can be recognized as essential preparation for future achievements. The experience of recovery itself builds confidence in one's fundamental resilience and capacity for renewal. Physical conditions like climate and nutrition fundamentally determine intellectual and creative capacity. The relationship between environment and mental performance runs far deeper than most people realize. What appears to be a matter of personal preference, where to live, what to eat, actually determines whether intellectual gifts can emerge at all. These physical factors don't merely influence comfort, they shape the very possibility of genius. Climate affects the body's fundamental processes in ways that directly impact mental agility. Nietzsche learned through painful experience to read atmospheric changes through his own physiology, calculating humidity, shifts during short journeys from Turin to Milan. He discovered that his entire life until age 34 had been spent in climatically wrong places: Naumburg, Leipzig, Basel, Venice, locations that prevented his true capabilities from emerging. Even slight intestinal sluggishness can transform potential genius into mediocrity, and the climate of Germany alone is enough to discourage the strongest and most heroically disposed intestines. The tempo of bodily functions connects directly to mental quickness. Great intellectual centers throughout history, Paris, Florence, Athens, Jerusalem, share exceptionally dry air that promotes wit, subtlety, and mental sharpness. Nutrition proves equally crucial for optimal brain function. German cooking, with its devastating effects on digestion, creates a direct assault on intellectual capacity. Nietzsche traced his early philosophical pessimism partly to poor Leipzig cuisine that made him earnestly renounce my will to live. The systematic destruction wrought by German cookery includes soup before meals, meat boiled to shreds, vegetables cooked with fat and flour, the degeneration of pastries into paper weights. When combined with absolutely bestial postprandial drinking habits, this creates what Nietzsche diagnosed as the source of German intellectual mediocrity: sadly disordered intestines. His devastating conclusion: German intellect is indigestion, it can assimilate nothing. Even a single glass of wine or beer could transform life into a valley of tears for his sensitive constitution. Proper nutrition requires understanding your individual stomach capacity and choosing foods that enhance, rather than burden, mental energy. The best cooking comes from regions like Piedmont, where preparation methods support rather than hinder intellectual work. Nietzsche developed precise dietary principles. All prejudices take their origin in the intestines. A sedentary life is the real sin against the Holy Spirit. These insights reveal why so many potentially gifted individuals never reach their capabilities. They remain trapped in unsuitable environments, eating foods that cloud their thinking, never discovering the specific conditions their constitution requires. Understanding these physical foundations becomes as important as any intellectual training. The person who masters their environmental needs gains access to mental resources that others, despite equal native ability, may never experience. True wisdom requires experiencing life from both positions of strength and weakness. Most people live their entire lives from a single perspective, either predominantly strong or consistently weak, which severely limits their understanding of human nature and values. This one-sided experience prevents them from grasping the full complexity of existence and leads to incomplete judgments about what truly matters. The author's unique position as both decadent and its reverse provided extraordinary insight into human psychology. Having reached his lowest vitality at 36, the same age his father died, he experienced profound weakness while retaining an underlying healthy constitution. This dual nature allowed him to understand sickness from the inside while maintaining the instincts of health. During his worst periods, he could observe the psychology of decline with scientific precision, noting how illness affects judgment and values. Yet his fundamental soundness enabled him to choose proper remedies and eventually recover, unlike true decadents who invariably select what harms them further. This combination gave him access to perspectives unavailable to those who know only one state. The ability to shift between these viewpoints reveals the hidden psychology behind different value systems. From the perspective of weakness, certain ideals appear paramount: self-sacrifice, humility, denial of natural instincts, and suspicion of personal ambition. These values make perfect sense for those lacking strength for self-assertion. However, from the standpoint of ascending life, entirely different values emerge: courage, growth, expansion, and affirmation of natural drives. Neither perspective alone provides complete wisdom. The person who has genuinely experienced both states can consciously choose which viewpoint serves best in different circumstances rather than being trapped in one limited framework. This dual perspective becomes particularly valuable when evaluating moral and cultural questions. Traditional morality often reflects the viewpoint of declining life, promoting values that diminish rather than enhance human potential. Understanding this allows for more sophisticated evaluation of moral systems and their effects. The goal isn't rejecting either perspective, but developing the flexibility to access both as needed, creating a more complete and nuanced understanding of human experience. Conventional morality often represents the values of declining rather than ascending life. Traditional moral systems consistently promote values that weaken rather than strengthen human vitality, yet these are presented as the highest ideals humanity can achieve. This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about the source and purpose of moral teachings that has shaped civilization for millennia. The elevation of selflessness as supreme virtue demonstrates how declining life has captured moral discourse. Every healthy organism must prioritize its own survival and flourishing. This represents basic biological wisdom, not moral failure. Yet Christian morality teaches contempt for the body, labels natural self-love as evil, and promotes the suppression of the personal element as spiritual advancement. These teachings systematically undermine the instincts necessary for growth and achievement. The concept of sin was invented specifically to confuse natural instincts and make self-preservation feel shameful. Instead of health, this morality offers salvation of the soul, a neurotic oscillation between convulsions of guilt and hysteria of redemption that weakens rather than strengthens human beings. The teachers and leaders who promoted these values were themselves products of decline. The priests, theologians, and moral philosophers who shaped Western thought were, every one of them, decadents who transformed their personal weakness into universal law. They divined in Christian morality their path to power over stronger, healthier types. The good man requires falsehood to maintain his worldview. He must refuse to see reality as it actually exists, with its terrible and questionable elements that demand strength to confront. This morality of self-renunciation translates the personal experience, "I am going to the dogs," into the universal imperative, "Ye shall all go to the dogs." It represents the revenge of failed life against successful life. The result has been a systematic inversion of natural values where weakness is praised as virtue and strength condemned as evil. This creates a culture that actively works against human flourishing, teaching people to despise the very qualities that would enable them to thrive. Recognizing this pattern allows for conscious choice about which values to embrace and which to question, based on whether they enhance or diminish life energy. Intellectual independence demands the courage to think beyond popular consensus. Most intellectual activity consists of responding to existing ideas rather than generating genuinely original thoughts. This happens because true thinking requires confronting the terrifying possibility of being completely wrong, misunderstood, or rejected by society. The pressure to conform extends even into scholarly work, making independent thought an act of profound courage. The typical scholar becomes trapped in a cycle of reaction and commentary that gradually destroys original thinking capacity. These individuals handle hundreds of books daily, constantly saying yes or no to thoughts already formulated by others, until they lose the ability to think independently. The author observed how gifted, free-spirited natures became read to ruins by 30, reduced to mere matches that needed rubbing before producing any sparks. Early morning reading, when mental energy should be at its peak, becomes positively vicious because it fills the mind with other people's thoughts during the hours most suited for original creation. The instinct of self-defense decays in such people, otherwise they would protect themselves against this intellectual contamination. True philosophical work requires venturing into forbidden territory, where conventional wisdom offers no guidance. The author described his philosophy as a voluntary retirement into regions of ice and mountain peaks, the seeking out of everything questionable in existence, everything upon which hitherto morality has set its ban. This exploration demanded developing tolerance for ideas that society considers dangerous or immoral. Most people lack the courage to examine fundamental assumptions about truth, morality, and human nature because such questioning threatens their psychological security. The motto "Nitimur in vetitum," we strive for the forbidden, captures this essential aspect of genuine philosophical work, the willingness to think thoughts that others dare not consider. Independent thinking also requires accepting intellectual isolation. The person who reaches genuinely original conclusions must be prepared to stand alone, often for years before others understand their insights. This demands not just intellectual courage, but emotional resilience, the ability to maintain confidence in one's ideas despite widespread rejection or indifference. Such thinking becomes possible only for those strong enough to value truth over social acceptance. Solitude and self-discipline are essential tools for discovering authentic identity. The discovery of one's true nature requires deliberate separation from social influences and the disciplined cultivation of inner resources. Most people never encounter their authentic selves because they remain constantly surrounded by others' opinions, expectations, and distractions that prevent genuine self-knowledge from emerging. The author's practice of absolute solitude revealed capabilities that social interaction had obscured. During his most productive periods, he deliberately severed himself from all familiar conditions and refused to be pampered, tended hand and foot, and doctored. This self-imposed isolation wasn't mere preference but necessity, the only way to hear his own voice above the constant noise of social demands. His work, Zarathustra, emerged from this profound solitude, which he described as a dithyramb in honor of solitude, or, if I have been understood, in honor of purity. The experience taught him that authentic creation requires protection from the rabble, whose proximity contaminated his thinking. Even brief contact with inferior minds could disrupt his mental clarity for extended periods. Self-discipline becomes the means of maintaining this necessary distance while developing inner strength. The author's rigorous attention to nutrition, climate, and daily routines wasn't obsessive behavior, but strategic self-management. He learned to read his body's responses to different foods, locations, and activities with scientific precision, treating himself as a delicate and reliable instrument for detecting optimal conditions. This included refusing alcohol entirely, choosing specific climates that enhanced mental function, and maintaining strict schedules that supported rather than hindered creative work. Such discipline requires viewing oneself as a project worthy of careful cultivation rather than accepting whatever circumstances chance provides. The combination of solitude and discipline creates space for authentic self-discovery that social life makes impossible. Without external validation or distraction, the individual must confront their true nature, both its strengths and limitations. This process demands courage because it reveals aspects of personality that social roles normally conceal. However, only through this honest self-examination can someone discover their unique capabilities and develop them fully. The goal isn't permanent isolation, but temporary withdrawal necessary for authentic development. You've just listened to our Blink to Ecce Homo by Friedrich Nietzsche. This remarkable work reveals how physical conditions fundamentally shape intellectual capacity, why periods of illness can become sources of profound strength, and how conventional morality often represents declining rather than ascending life. Nietzsche demonstrates that true wisdom requires experiencing both strength and weakness, while intellectual independence demands the courage to think beyond popular consensus. The development of authentic identity emerges through deliberate solitude and self-discipline, combined with the rare ability to transform suffering into insight. Understanding the hidden psychology behind moral systems allows for conscious choice about which values genuinely enhance life versus those that diminish human potential.